snippy, snip, 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 snip. This time on Natto Maki's Yokai Yashiki, we're going to talk about Kanibozu. If you don't know any Japanese, Kani means crab. And Bozu is a priest. So the whole story of this is kind of a lesser known yokai. But the whole story is it's this temple in Yamanashi prefecture called Chogenji. And this temple has this story. So first of all, they have the priests in this Buddhist temple, and every time they get a new priest, he disappears the next day, and they send in a new priest, and then that one disappears too. Everyone's like, oh well, fuck it, we don't need to send any more priests to that temple anymore, and just left it as that. Nobody cared what happened to the priests, they just stopped sending them. Then this wandering Buddhist monk just happened across this village, and people in the village are like, no, you can't stay here. If you want somewhere to stay, you can just stay at that temple. Of course, they didn't say anything that had happened in the temple to the Buddhist priest. But anyway, so the guy goes to the temple, he's like, oh well, there's nobody here. Nobody here, why don't I just go to sleep for the night? And after he goes to sleep, this guy comes to him in his dream, who's also a Buddhist monk, and he tells him a riddle. And then the guy solves it in his sleep, wakes up, and everyone's around. He's like, whoa, you're not dead, why aren't you dead? And he's like, I don't know, I had the weirdest dream about this guy who told me a riddle. And then he's like, there's a pond out the back of here, and I think it's pretty suspicious. So they're all like, oh yeah, look at that pond. And he's like, you know what we need to do? We need to drain this whole pond. Because nobody in this village has anything better to do. And they're all like, yeah, so they all get together and drain this whole pond, and in the pond is this big crab. It's a meter squared or something like that. So it's a pretty big crab, and so they're like, oh, it's a giant big crab, and there was skulls in the pond as well. There was skulls in the pond, and then they're like, let's kill the crab, and so they did, and that's the end of the story. Okay, let's wrap this down. Stories always start from somewhere. Some kind of monster, ghost story always starts with one event. And you know what the start of this story is? Someone just saw a big crab. And then they told the mate, and they're like, so what, that you saw a big crab? That doesn't mean anything. Is that but there was some skulls near the crab, because I guess it killed those monks that disappeared from our shitty town. But you know what, crabs just eat anything. So if there's a skull in a pond or something, it's still got some meat in it, the crab's just going to be snip snip, get something good to eat, and then someone comes along, oh, this crab has killed the person. Isn't that stupid? Anyway, so there's another version of the story where he actually tells the riddle, because the first version of the story I read, he doesn't even say the riddle. It's just oh, this guy got a riddle in his dream and solved it. Anyway, so this other version of the story is every monk in this temple, this other monk came across and gives him a riddle, and you know what the riddle is? The riddle is, what has 8 legs, walks sideways, and looks up towards the sky? And then any priest who thought, got a little bewildered by this sudden riddle, got killed by this ghost priest or whatever. It's one of those stories though, how does anyone know that these people got killed because they failed the riddle? So yeah, anyone who failed the riddle got killed. And then this wandering monk guy came along and he's like, what, the answer to this riddle with what has 8 legs, walks sideways, and looks up towards the sky, it's a crab. And then he stabs the priest, because that's normal behavior, and then was celebrated because it turned out the priest was a ghost crab. But this is my favorite part of the whole story is this version that my boyfriend told me yesterday, so I didn't have time to prepare for this, is when they saw this crab ghost thing, and it had a bunch of eggs on its belly, but they weren't eggs, they were human heads. And I really wish that I could have prepared for that and had a bunch of doll's heads under my tits, so I could oh, look at all my dead babies that are growing on my belly. Anyway, I love thinking about where a story can come from. This one, just someone saw a really big crab that was sitting on a skull, and just it kind of evolves into this crab that murdered a whole bunch of monks, and then people found it and killed it. So yeah, Snip, snip, snip. Snippity, snip, snip. Snip, snip, snip. Snip.